Right, back in the game. Elliot, I've missed you. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. It's been far too long.
Too long indeed, but what better way to come back? UFC 274, what a card. I mean, I'm still repping the UFC London merch. I've got the Paddy top on, just in case people didn't know that we went there. But no, we're past that point and a big card coming up. Feels like the amount of fight nights that happen now, it's I personally think it makes the pay-per-views better, but sort of in a bad way as far as the UFC is concerned, because I actually lose a bit of love for the fight nights, especially when there's no crowds there, not the most stacked cards, and it's kind of like, okay, cool, some decent fights. But then you get to the pay-per-view and it's like, okay, this is like the real deal again now. We get big crowds, we get the big fights, title fights, and the energy just ramps up so much. You almost forget how energetic the UFC can be, and then you get to these big pay-per-views and you're sort of reminded a little bit. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I feel it was like three fight nights in a row. That feels like forever. I'm so used to two, but yeah, three in a row really felt quite long. And now UFC 274 is coming up, and it feels massive. It really feels like a big event.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's crack on because there's tons of good fights, tons to talk about. So let's jump straight into it. We're going to work our way from the top of the card to the bottom, and then we're going to pick out another fight outside of the main card that people should look out for. So yeah, let's jump straight into it. The main event: Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. I am so excited for this fight for so many reasons, and I'm going to start off by saying I'm one of these people that keeps counting out Charles Oliveira. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. Uh, you know, he could be fighting Andy Wang from season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter, absolute legend. Could be fighting anyone, and I'd be like, you know what? I think Charles Oliveira's got the potential to lose this one. I just won't give him the credit he's due. But I mean, what an absolute run this guy's on. If he beats Justin Gaethje this weekend, is it a bit harsh on Khabib to say he's pretty much done what Khabib's done if he beats Gaethje this weekend? I mean, Khabib didn't put the longest streak together with his title. I think what was it, 3 title defenses. He's done it pretty quickly in terms of if he knocked out Chandler, choked out Poirier, then if he can finish Justin Gaethje, some run this guy's on, and obviously the win streak goes much further than that as well. So this guy does deserve a lot of credit, but I mean, Justin Gaethje, I sort of go the opposite way of him, and I struggle to pick against him. He's just an absolute beast. He loves a fight. Scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for this fight? And do you think it's that much of a good matchup, or are you sort of leaning quite heavily in one direction?
I think this is like the perfect matchup. I
Mm.
think they're both finishers. I think Oliveira's got like 9 finishes in his last 10 fights. And I think the only guy he didn't finish is like Tony Ferguson, which is pretty crazy now if you put it into context.
Mm.
But I'm in an hour on who's going to win it, because I'm the same as you. I think Oliveira, I always count him out, but he's in like a crazy win streak, and he's beating some of the top guys. And how can you keep counting him out?
Mm.
I think Joe Rogan once said it's like always consider a fighter at their highest point. That's when you should remember him. And I think Oliveira now is at his highest point, so maybe that's how we should judge him. But then Gaethje, the hardest hitting like lightweight, it's a crazy matchup, and it's so strange because if you want to do the MMA maths, Oliveira knocked out Chandler, or Gaethje couldn't, and all that kind of rubbish. But I think it just makes it more exciting. I really can't call it. I keep changing my mind.
Yeah, I honestly can't really pick a winner. I'm leaning Gaethje, but I'm a little bit biased because I love Gaethje. And I think he's maybe getting in my head a little bit. I think one of the things he's saying is about all this about how Oliveira's got quitting him and things like that, which I think no, Oliveira's pretty much proved to be wrong as of late. But he says if it's been there once, it can be there again. He thinks he can make him quit, and if anybody's going to break you down, it is Justin Gaethje because he's just an absolute animal. He just keeps coming. So I think if I had to lean in one direction, I'm going to go with the Gaethje TKO. But I think the safest bet for this one is that it doesn't go the distance. Surely, there's no way this one goes the distance, is there?
No, not a chance.
No. Yeah, I think it's either got to be round 1 or 2 sub for Charles or round 1 or 2 knockout for Justin. Really, possibly stretched to round 3, but yeah, don't see it going really any other way. Yeah, I guess. Any other thoughts on this one? I guess we'll go with if Oliveira does win this fight, what's left for him? What would you like to see next for him? Is it got to be that Islam Makhachev fight, or do you think Islam needs to fight Beneil? I don't know. Tough one. What do you think could be next for him?
Yeah, I like the Makhachev fight because it's the closest we've got to Khabib, and it kind
Mm.
of almost answers the question about what Oliveira would be like against Khabib. I know it's not kind of apparent because it's not Khabib, but it's the closest thing we've got. There's a narrative there which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, and would you just want to see the same for Justin then? If Justin got it done, you think Islam's the next guy, or?
Yeah, the redemption from the Khabib fight. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stories there. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fair enough. So no Conor McGregor then. No Conor McGregor lightweight title shot.
I mean, everyone's saying they'd hate it, but you'd watch it and you'd be excited, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and everybody would start off saying, "Oh, why is Conor getting this fight? He's going to get destroyed." And then he'd start talking, and everybody'd start believing him again. Like, oh, actually, I think Conor could do this because he's just so confident. He convinces you of anything, doesn't he? But he'd get people to buy it, no doubt. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Co-main event: Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza, a rematch. Obviously, Carla beat Rose back in the day. It's a long time ago now, and they've sort of went on different journeys, really. But they've both managed to stay around the top of the division for a long time and finally got to a point where they sort of just had to fight again, really, didn't they? There's not really any other options for both of them. Not any better options anyway. So I think I'm maybe overlooking Carla Esparza a bit in this one. She's obviously here for a reason. She beat Rose last time. So it can't be too often that you pick the person that got beat the first time to win the second one. But I think everyone feels pretty heavy on Rose, it's fair to say. And I think it's just because of how good Rose has gotten and how good she's looked as of late. Obviously, particularly against Zhang Weili. Is very well-rounded as well. Do you see anywhere Carla gets this done? Are you counting her out, or?
Yeah, I'm on the side of Rose here. Rematch Rose, I think people are calling her now after like the obviously our little run. Yeah, I think Rose looked amazing in her last fight. Even before that, the Weili kind of rematch and the first fight looks amazing. But I find with more of the women's divisions, it's more about the pressure. It's a slightly different game, as you've seen with Juliana Pena against Nunes. There's a few different things which just divides the division up a little bit. So if Esparza can just keep on that pressure, we could see an upset. But you'd imagine most of the time it'd be Rose's fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so. If we go with Carla winning first, theoretically, do you think they'd probably just go ahead and do the third one? Do you think they go for the trilogy straight away? Because there's not really another big standout option, is there, in that division? So I think that you would probably see an immediate rematch if Carla got it done.
I mean, we've got that, or I believe Weili and Jacek are fighting again.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the winner of that potentially.
Yeah, possibly. And then on the flip side, it's maybe going to be tough for Rose because she's already beaten Joanna and Zhang, hasn't she? So she's getting, very close to clearing out the division, really, if she beats Carla again here. So, can't really see a moving division, though. So it could be a bit of a tricky one. So maybe the best thing for the division is a Carla win, to be honest, because then, like you say, you've got the Joanna Zhang fight for Carla and then see what happens and get Rose back in the mix, maybe see what happens there. So, be interesting to see what Rose does after this one. Because Rose is the type of person who you wouldn't rule it out to see her win this weekend and then be like, no, I'm done, actually. That wouldn't surprise me too much, to be honest. We've seen it before from her. So, interested to see what happens after that this weekend. But, she's become a big star. So, always happy to see Rose fight. She definitely brings a lot of energy. So, moving on then, probably the fight I'm most excited for on this card, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson. We've got Ross on the team as a big Tony Ferguson fan. I think he's pretty worried about this one. But where do you start? Let's start with Tony Ferguson. I think he's the more interesting of the two. He's gone from being probably criminally underrated as one of the best lightweights ever. I think it would have been fair to say at the height of his run, to pretty much go in the complete opposite direction, almost a Tyron Woodley-esque skid where he can't seem to win a round or really, in his last few fights, don't remember any bit of offense other than that Gaethje uppercut. But that's in how many 11 rounds or so that he's lost in a row now. What do you think of Tony Ferguson as a fighter? Do you think he's still got it? Do you think he's done? How do you rate him?
Yeah, I think it's a weird one because it sounds disrespectful to say to a fighter who was on, is it a 10 fight winning streak, a 12 fight winning streak, along those lines?
Yeah.
to say he's kind of washed after like losing against the top of the top. I think Chandler is a beatable matchup for him, but Chandler's also looked good in his losses. I think didn't he drop Oliveira as well? Yeah, it's a hard one. You think it's kind of Chandler's time now as opposed to Ferguson's time.
Yeah, I think so. I think totally agree with you. It's MMA fans are really harsh, and to think who's Tony Ferguson lost against? He's lost to Justin Gaethje, one of the best fighters around, fighting for the belt this weekend. Charles Oliveira, one of the best fighters around, has the belt this weekend, and then Beneil Dariush, who could arguably be fighting for a title next, and possible future champion. He's on a massive run as well. So it's not like he's losing against. It's not like a Donald Cowboy Cerrone thing, which we'll obviously get to a bit later, where it's like, okay, he's on a losing skid, and now he's actually fighting much lesser competition, and he still can't win, so he probably is on his way out. Ferguson's not in that spot yet, but I'm a bit gutted for him because he's not at that point where you say, right, let him take a step back in competition and see how he does. He's got Michael Chandler now, so we're talking about his 3 losses there against the best, and then Michael Chandler's the next best guy, basically. So I feel a little bit sorry for him that he doesn't get a breather, but I'm sure he doesn't lack confidence and he fancies it, but it would have been nice to see him get a step back and see how he can actually do. So yeah, it's really interesting because it's one of them where if he could get absolutely battered this weekend, it could be a bad one. Chandler obviously knocked out Dan Hooker pretty quick, dropped Oliveira like you said. I don't think he quite dropped Gaethje, but he had him really hurt, didn't he? So he's just a monster, and yeah, it could be a bad night for him. So how do you sort of rate Chandler on the flip side then? Because he's had quite a tricky career. He's 1-2 technically. So how do you sort of rate him?
I think he's fine despite his losses. I think he's up there. He's an entertainer as well. I think Dana's always going to have a kind of a soft spot for him. But I think this will be the chance where Ferguson can show to show more work. As before, he was getting taken down and things like that. Where Chandler, I don't think will take him down, or if he does, it would kind of be for a big takedown, then get back up and strike for the entertainment purposes. So Ferguson seems to have a chip on his shoulder. I'm not too sure if you've seen his in interviews and things like that. He's really he's uptight about a lot of things. So we could see a completely different Ferguson from the last few losses.
Yeah, that was an understatement about his interviews. He's probably the last person on earth you'd want to interview, to be honest. It'd be so uncomfortable and awkward. But yeah, it's... What do you think Ferguson will do if he gets beat then? Let's say he just goes and loses all 3 rounds again, another decision. Is this a point where Uncle Dana steps in and says, maybe you've had enough, or would you like to see him take that step back? Where do you think he'll be at?
I think Dana would get involved. Even though he said these 2 fighters are fine, he changes his words a lot. And I'd like to see him go up to welterweight because he hinted at he enjoyed welterweight in the Ultimate Fighter. I wouldn't mind seeing that, but again, the matchups are not particularly great for him. There are a lot of wrestlers and things like that at 170. Yeah, I think it might be the case of Dana stepping in to saying, look, kind of on a few losses now, maybe your time's done.
Yeah, 38 Tony Ferguson is, so it's no spring chicken. Not the type of age where you want to be taking 4 consecutive beatings in a row. Because it does wear on you more and more as the time goes on, and presumably cuts a decent bit of weight as well. It's not good, but yeah, hopefully it goes well for him. And Chandler as well, he's 36. If he loses this fight, he's on a 3-fight skid. He's going to be 1-3 in the UFC. If he wasn't such a big star, that's cutting territory, really, isn't it? Losing 3 of your first 4 fights in the UFC, which is pretty weird to think about, considering how close he could be to have basically beaten everyone, or maybe being champ. So what do you think they'd maybe do with him if he gets beat? Do you think maybe same for Chandler, move up to welterweight? He's hinted at that a couple of times. He's pretty muscly. I think he wouldn't mind the move up. Do you think maybe the same for him?
I would love that. I would love Chandler at welterweight. I think there's a potential McGregor fight in Chandler if he goes on this loss again, because he's not going to kind of ruin the McGregor brand by just like taking him down and making it a boring fight. I think it'd make it really exciting. And I think McGregor might have a bit of respect for him because he's quite well spoken and he's always happy to have a brawl. So I think there's a potential McGregor fight in there. I know it's getting a bit of a cliche now to throw McGregor and everything, but I think this one does make sense.
yeah, if you're ever in doubt, just Conor McGregor, you can fight him. Just
Yeah,
easy shout. Shogun Rua fighting this weekend. Maybe Conor wants to step up, just maybe get in there with him. Yeah,
meet him halfway.
yeah, fair enough. And yeah, that was my terrible segue to the next fighter anyway, Mauricio Shogun, who are fighting OSP. No, I'm not going to lie, I don't have a huge amount to say about this fight, except why. I thought Shogun was done, and I hope Shogun was done. I'm just about to check Shogun's age, actually. He's 40 years old. OSP's 39. I wouldn't have thought OSP was only 1 year younger than Shogun. But yeah, it's not like Shogun's had a bad career. He was actually on the cusp of a bit of a resurgence. Like, he seemed like he was looking pretty good. It felt like not too long ago, but it probably was. But yeah, his last fight was really rough. Ended up tapping out due to strikes, just getting absolutely mauled by Paul Craig. Do you want to see Shogun in there, or do you want these? I guess the question is, you want these people who likes to see these big names still get in there, or would you like to see him call it a day?
It's a weird one because the UFC is they're so on it about having the best fight the best. Because the reason I say that, because I wouldn't mind older fighters fighting older fighters as long as they look okay in context. But when it's like this, I think the last time they fought was like the first round, 30-something seconds, and it's like, I know the chances are it won't happen again, but I think there's got to be a time to move on.
Yeah, and for OSP, what do you sort of think of where he's at the minute? I mean, if you look at his record, seems to be a lot more losses than wins lately. Do you think he's just kind of phasing out a bit? I know obviously the move to heavyweight wasn't really a smart one, but even if you beat Shogun, does that really mean you're back in the mix? And I don't think it does an awful lot for you. Are you excited to see OSP get back in there this weekend?
I'm looking forward to the fight, but I can't think of anything that's going to happen after this fight. There's no consequence. There's no achievement after.
Yeah,
yeah. It's one of them where it's a fine fight. I'd watch it, and it's okay to put on the main card. So that's about it. There's not going to be any title fights after or anything like that.
No. I think, to be honest, with fights like that, it sounds a little bit brutal, but I just kind of hope we're over a bit early, because they do get a little bit sad if they start dragging on and you start to see their age and it's getting a bit sloppy, and it's like, oh, this isn't the guy we remember. Like, round 3 Shogun isn't going to look like the old Shogun. So I kind of would like to see this one over a little bit early and kind of get it done with personally. But I'm a little bit negative when it comes to the older fighters like that. And speaking of older fighters, last fight on the main card, Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Joel Lazon. Again, just going to get your excitement level first off, because I know there's 2 guys who we do like to see fight. But are you excited to see them fight at this stage, or?
I'm not mad at it. They're both getting on,
Mm-hmm.
It's an easier fight for Cerrone. He's had some pretty brutal fights as of recent, and he can take it a bit slow and, make himself look good like he did against Hernandez. Them nice combinations and things like that. More of a show as opposed to, like we said before, like a title decider or anything like that.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's their last fight. I think so. I think Dana hinted at that as well. But as the first fight on the main card, it's one of the things. If you're watching the UFC with someone who doesn't watch the UFC and be like, okay, this is the story. This is Cerrone. This is his kind of life. I think it's a nice opening to the main card.
Yeah. No, fair enough. It's it's a bittersweet one. But again, Cowboy 39, Joel is on 37. Bit of a theme going on in this card where there's quite a few older fighters who are potentially on the way out. But on the flip side, it can be a really nice story if you think someone could be done, and then they sort of turn it around a bit. We have seen it. We've seen late career resurgences, and that's, I think, kind of what keeps these fights going, what keeps you a bit excited about them. Like, we would all love to see these 2 put on a good performance and maybe move on a bit. Like Cowboy, if you get the win, get a bit of momentum going again, because we know how good he is. But at the same time, it looks less and less likely. What do you think then? Again, I know we sort of spoke about there's not really any consequence to it. Do you think this could be a case of both of them are done after this one, win or lose, or how do you see it playing out afterwards?
Unless we see it like an amazing performance, not getting touched and looks amazing, unless that happens, yeah, I think it's kind of their time to go. which is, it sounds negative. It sounds like I'm kind of like, talking them down, but they've had a great career, and it's just, it's just their time. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Joel is on himself, is coming off a win. So, we'll see how he feels if he can put on a good performance. Like you say, it would have to be a good one. I think a drawn out, sort of close, scrappy decision probably won't quite it for either guy. And obviously it's been a while since Cowboy's won. He's got some grappling losses in there as well, so his record's filling up with L's, if I'm honest. But you have to go all the way back to Ali Quinta in 2019 to find his last win. So bit of a shame, but I'm personally hoping we see Cowboy turn it around this weekend. That would be nice. Turn back the clock a bit, but we shall see. So that's the main card. Definitely a good main card. Not amazing. I think what gets it over the line is that main event. I think everybody's massively excited for that main event. Lightweight title fight's always a good one because lightweight's probably the best division in the UFC. So you always want to see who's top dog on that one. Rest of the card's good. I'm looking forward to the Chandler Ferguson one. Definitely not a bad card. I think it's a good one. But for me, what really gets the excitement going is that main event. So looking forward to that. So just to finish off then we'll wrap up in a minute. One more fight to look out for on this card. What are you going with, Elliot?
Well, I've just noticed this fight's in the early prelims, which is crazy. I think they might try and change it to the actual prelims later on. It's Andre Fialo versus Cameron Van Camp. Van Camp's, it's going to be his debut in the UFC. His record's looking quite clean, but obviously I can't say too much on that. But Fialo's coming off a finish win in his last fight, and before that he fought Pereira, which is in his debut, which is crazy. Pereira's an absolute animal. Yeah. Fialo's is a Portuguese. It's like a Portuguese boxer. He's a really crisp striker, and I think it's going to be such a fun fight. I'm really excited for this fight. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Fialo. As soon as I seen him, I was like, that's someone to watch out for straight away. There's just a bit of a difference. You can see he'd already had the experience, being around in different organizations. He wasn't like a fresh face to the UFC. He knew what he was doing. Couldn't ask for a tougher debut, really, in terms of just an awkward fight. But looked great in his last one because I really rate Miguel Baeza. So, excited to see him back in there. I think we could see him put together a bit of a win streak and probably be knocking on the rankings this time next year, I think. But we'll see what happens with him. I'm going to go with Randy Brown versus Chaos Williams. Just a fun fight, I think. It's a fight with two guys who are really confident. I think we could potentially see a bit of trash talking in there. Chaos Williams is obviously full of confidence. Had a lot of people talking. Sort of took a bit of a step back with that Pereira fight, but he's definitely still got it. And I think he's got a knockout in him. If he can get it this weekend, everybody would be back on the hype train for him. And Randy Brown, he's sort of been around forever, but he's really underrated, I think. If you look at the guys he fights, the last 5 fights, his only losses to Vicente Luque, who's just an absolute monster, like one of the best in the welterweight division. And then his other 4 around that, he beat Brian Barberina, knocked him out, beat Wally Alves, choked him out, beat Alex Cowboy Oliveira, choked him out, and then he beat Jared Gooden in his last fight, which was a fun scrap as well. It doesn't lose too many fights. He's a good fighter. I think we're probably going to see these two stand up, but I think Randy's probably got the advantage of the grappling if he wants to sort of use that in his back pocket if it's not going well for him. But again, just one of them fights where you look at and you say, don't see this one going the distance. Should be a fun fight. And looking forward to it. So, anyway, scale of 1 to 10 finishes off. How excited are you for this weekend?
I am so excited. It's been too long. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10. I'm that excited. It's like I've been needing it in my life after 3 fight nights, and boxing just doesn't do it for me. I know there's everyone's saying like, the Fury White fight was a crazy fight. That's just like it's not the same. It's just not the same.
No, fair enough. Yeah, it's especially living in England. It's these fight nights don't really cut it at 5 a.m. It's like, all right, we all love a bit of UFC, but it's getting a bit late here, and there's no crowd, and this fight isn't great. It does get a little bit tough, but these pay-per-views, there's no falling asleep for this one. It's going to be a good one. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 for now, but I've had a busy week. I need to get caught up on the content. I'm going to get the embeddeds on. I'm going to get all the content down my throat, and then I'll probably text you later and say I'm at a 10 out of 10. Send you some videos of me shadow boxing and stuff. Right, nice one. It's good to chat again. Looking forward to it, and hopefully do it again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Cheers.